Antonio smiled back. Everybody okay? Yes. 7 pounds, 8 ounces, and they've named her Elizabeth. Finally a bit of good news. Send the usual. Flowers, a card. Lucinda waved her hand at him. I know what to do. She walked away briskly, back down the hallway, which meant she'd covered the most urgent matters. Non-urgent messages would be sitting on his desk. Lucinda was his most dependable employee. She'd been with him when he started his company 3 years ago, coming on as a temp when he had very little money, and now she basically ran the place. He needed to get her an assistant before she burned out. Antonio set his briefcase on the floor beside his desk and placed his jacket on the metal coat tree. He squinted his eyes against the sun's yellow rays beaming in through the half-open blinds that covered the entire back wall of the office. Outside, the commercial buildings of downtown Atlanta, banks, retail stores, and other office suites, rose from the pavement, casting shadows on the people and vehicles hurrying along the avenue. The room, decorated in a minimalist design of steel and glass, only contained a few pieces of furniture, 2 guest chairs, a couple of 4-drawer file cabinets, and a desk, which was basically a long rectangular piece of glass on steel legs. In one corner stood a tall green potted plant that Cassidy had shown up with one day because she insisted his office needed color. Antonio's days tended toward disorder, but his office was immaculate. A photo of him and Cassidy on their wedding day, a phone, his laptop, a paper tray containing the messages Lucinda left for him, and his favorite pen were the only items on the desk. There was no clutter because everything had its place. He couldn't function in chaos. The phone rang as he closed the blinds. When he answered, Lucinda announced Michael Crane on the line. What happened? Antonio asked, lowering into the high-back chair and crossing his legs. Michael launched into an explanation. At the same time, Lucinda quietly entered with a cup of coffee and set it on the desk. She must be clairvoyant. He eyed the cup gratefully and mouthed a thank you before she slipped back out. He took a sip. Perfect. He really needed to get her an assistant, and a raise. As a publicist for professional athletes, Antonio was used to them doing foolish things. That's why they needed someone like him. But even he couldn't believe what he was hearing as he listened to his client explain how a member of the paparazzi had taken photos of him leaving a Las Vegas nightclub with an alleged hooker on his arm, while in the middle of a custody battle with his ex-wife. As if that wasn't enough, he'd gotten into a scuffle with the cameraman, cracking his camera lens when he shoved him to the sidewalk. All right, listen to me, Antonio said when he'd heard enough. I need you to stay away from nightclubs and hookers, strippers, and any other women of ill repute. Had he really said ill repute? He sounded like his father. I was just having a little fun. This case is getting to me, man. Crane was an Atlanta Falcons wide receiver. As one of their star players, he was easily recognized, which was not a good thing because of the legal battle with his ex-wife. Antonio silently sighed. This is the part where we lay our cards on the table. What's more important to you, your daughter or your penis? What kind of question is that? He sounded offended. Answer it, Antonio said testily. Man, of course you know it's my daughter. She's my everything. Then act like it. Forget about your lower head for a minute and use the upper one to think about what you could lose. Because if you keep this up, you might as well forget about seeing her unless your ex allows it, which defeats the purpose of going back to court because you wanted to see your daughter more often, right? We both know how your ex feels about you since you cheated on her during your entire marriage. And this little episode isn't going to help. The other end of the line was quiet. Antonio waited him out. You're right. I don't want to hear it. You're a grown man. If you love your daughter and want to keep seeing her without restrictions, you need to make better choices. I messed up. Yeah, you did. Antonio wasn't letting up and needed to make sure Michael understood what was at stake, because he'd obviously forgotten. You're right. You know how much I love my baby girl. I didn't even get to see her on her 4th birthday. His voice thickened. How am I going to fix this? Antonio rubbed his forehead as he envisioned ways to spin the story and clean up this mess. We'll get to work on it right away and touch base with you within the hour with the press release. And Michael? Yeah. Get the hell out of Vegas and come home. I'm on the next flight out. Antonio hung up and ran his hand down his face. Although